The Economist asks, why are Americans so gloomy about their great economy? Never fails to amaze me. Unemployment is low. Stock market booming. Real wages improving. They say. They even mention that some Americans are missing all the COVID-related subsidies. I.e., slackers just wanting free money. They just won't see the elephant in the room. The stock market is not the general economy. Real wages may improve a few cents at the lower end. But when all of the real gains are just being extracted by the top, leaving most people struggling and no better off, people are going to be gloomy about the economy. You won't fix this economy until you fix the conditions that have allowed all of the gains to flow to the top, leaving most people worse off and more desperate. I'm all for wealth tax. But even without that, if we just restored strongly progressive tax brackets, didn't tax cap gains at a low rate but taxed them at the prevailing marginal rates, and significantly raised corporate taxation, we'd make a big dent in reversing the structural problems that got us here. No one wants to talk about that. Instead, it's all just painted as malaise by disgruntled peasants who don't see how good they have it. Why are Americans so gloomy about their great economy? Economist calm. I'm getting in arguments weekly on our economics about how things aren't great for at least a large portion of Americans. The average American isn't watching the stock market hit all-time highs. They are watching food and rent get more and more expensive while their wages continue to stagnate. I also don't blame Biden for this because inflation is bad the world over and relatively it is better in the US. American here, not poor, but still gloomy. 60% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. Yeah, everything's fine. It never fails to amaze me either. Year after year statistics come out in article after article about exactly why and how people are struggling financially. The economists largely stick their head in the sand and point to the stock market value as if we can spend that on groceries and bills today and endlessly wonder how we could be so wrong. Our models for gauging how well Americans are doing are broken. 2/3 of the country says it doesn't reflect their day-to-day existence and they still scratch their heads. Is it any wonder such anti-capitalist sentiment has risen in the past decades? Maybe it's because capitalism isn't working for most Americans anymore. Prices and wages. It is all about prices. Inflation has fallen. Costs to businesses have fallen. But they are not lowering prices. In fact, it has increasingly become obvious that the massive price increase in goods and services was not inflation-driven, but profit-driven. Corporations use the excuse of inflation to drive market prices to the breaking point while keeping wages down. You say wages are up, but they are not up 17% across the board, and that is the estimate of inflation-driven prices have risen. We all literally need about 20% raise to even get back to our purchasing power of 2020. Finally, it is an election year and the poo-throwing screech monkeys have ramped up their poo throwing and screeching. Article right before this in our Economics, homelessness up 12%. The economy is not good, especially relative to the rest of the world now. No time in history has a nation been the de facto world power while being unimaginably behind its peers in healthcare, homelessness, public transit tech, safety, crime, and drug abuse. It's not a profits and GDP issue. It's a value issue. There is no value left for regular citizens in the USA. Our economy is just fudging numbers to turn corporate profits on things that are free and equitable in other developed nations. Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head there. It's not the people's economy. Their communities see none of that growth, and a lot of that growth has come via greedflation. The middle class is effectively non-existent at this point. You either have amazingly returns or you're a peasant. All of the people experiencing the advantages of investing are so far on the other end of the spectrum that industries are all catering to them, so margins on products or services. In addition to the fixing and gouging, I'd say that's driving up the call line a runaway train. The Economist, as well as most TV talking heads, refuse to acknowledge that a great economy for the very wealthy does not translate to a great economy for the 99%. They never factor ordinary people's experience into their calculations. The previous administration gave corporations a 14% tax cut, saying it would trickle down. Has anyone's salary gone up 14% above their company's growth? Yeah. No one's salaries are being increased because the economy is great. Just the rich getting richer and the rest of us poors being left behind as per usual. Because capitalism is a terrible system that effectively enslaves labor in all industries. Work for poverty wages so you can at least have food and shelter. Yeah, that's slavery emo. Neoliberalism basically marks the complete divorce of economic performance and widespread stability, prosperity. What's good for the economy sucks for the majority. Bourgeois logic and metrics equals investors' paradise and workers' nightmare. People don't care about the economy. They care about their economy. If the economy is doing great and going gangbusters, but people don't feel any gains from it in their economy, then the economy isn't really great after all, is it? Also, low unemployment means low hiring, which means those of us looking for a job are getting run ragged. 100+ applicants on jobs with subpar pay rates. Like 405k for jobs requiring a 4-year degree and 5+ years of highly specific professional experience. It's a mess out here. Here is what every single one of us needs to say in response to, the stock market is booming. The wealthiest 10% of Americans own 90%, $28 trillion, of the stock market. The bottom 90% of Americans own 10%, $3 trillion, of the stock market. Lenin referred to The Economist as a journal that speaks for British millionaires. If you take 50 service industry jobs and 50 white-collar jobs, raise every job's pay the equivalent of $1 an hour, then lay off the 50 white-collar workers and leave their jobs unfilled while creating 51 service industry jobs and fill them, partly with laid-off white-collar workers. Wages will have gone up, employment rates will be high, the stock market will be booming, and workers as a group will be more broke and miserable than before. It's not gloom. It's alternative happiness trademark. I went to a McDonald's in Connecticut the other day. McNugget meal rang up to $20. I just drove off.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicaricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.